Now, okay, sounds good so far, and I'm gonna say let's just keep rolling with it then.
That's right. We got it. We got it.
Yeah. So now I'm just a little concerned about the link that was sent out previously before with anybody. So unfortunately, it's not going to show anything for that link. They would have to like go to the channel and find a new live. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's the only concern now. So all right, well, it is what it is. We're here to have a conversation, and we will have some guests joining us. As you see, we have people starting to join now, so that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, just a little sound check for anybody joining in. Anybody can just say hello if you guys hear everything okay. Please let us know just to make sure we're doing okay with the sound. Just want to make sure before we continue with everything because it sounds good on my end. But
And it does to me too. So,
okay, so I'll just keep going.
yeah.
I hope everybody's having a great Friday. I know Fridays can be a little hustle and bustle as we're ending our work week. And for those who work Monday through Friday, it's kind of like a relaxed time to understand that it's coming to an end and you can have a little break. But, everybody's different. My schedule is consistently every day. So I don't have a Friday or a weekend per se, but it's okay. Because when work is like fun, then it doesn't feel like work anyway. So it doesn't matter.
That part. Yeah,
Yes.
that part.
All right. Thank you so much, Global Glock. Thank you for letting me know that the sound is good. And hello, hello. Welcome back. I appreciate you joining. So today we're having a really special guest that has quite a bit of experience under her belt on the matter and a topic that I've wanted to have since I've purchased a home. And I was thinking about the safety of women in the industry of realty services. And so she's the perfect person to have this conversation with, having this experience. She has a team behind her and she has some experiences herself. So, without further more, I'm going to introduce you guys to Miss Stephanie DeBerry. Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for joining today. I really, really appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to share, to answer any questions. So
Thank
I'm
you.
grateful. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. So, the way we normally do this on Fridays, I know it's your first time being a guest on Shoot the on Fridays, we have a discussion from anything revolving with women, safety or concerns, or just safety concerns for everyone, or any
Right.
issues that are specific to women specifically, and then all other types of safety concerns. So,
Okay.
with that being said, we always make sure that as our viewers are making comments, we're very chatty. We like to have a conversation with one another. That's what it's all about, having a community discussion. Although we understand
Hmm.
this is worldwide, I still like to say community because it feels more welcoming.
Right.
um, and when it comes to that, I just want to everybody to know that it's okay to leave comments and interact with us, but we're going to be respectful of everyone. So, as we know, some people have certain views that may be very strong one way or another, and as long as
Hmm.
we're respectful, that's okay. No answer is
Right.
the wrong answer for me. And welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for joining again. Hey, hey, hey. Thanks, Kevin, for joining us. Okay, but yeah, comments like that is gonna get you kicked, Kevin. So I suggest you get your act together, sir, or miss. 2024, can't assume.
Right.
All right. So, Miss Stephanie, the first thing I want to
Mhm.
talk to you about is just making sure we understand about personal safety concerns during the time that you are showing property. So, before we get into that, I do want to jump in and ask you to tell us a little bit about your experience in the field so that we can kind of
Sure.
understand what it is you do and what your experiences may have been.
Okay. So again, I am Stephanie D. Berry. I have been a realtor in the Washington, D.C. metro area for about almost 20 years. So I'm licensed in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And so not only do I help people purchase homes, I help people sell their properties. invest in properties, rent properties. And so a large part of what I do as an agent, of course, is helping buyers because I help people buy and sell, helping buyers. And so, and even my sellers, that just means we go into properties, right? And a lot of times we're entering into properties, myself and other realtors and real estate agents, where we may not know the people necessarily, or the property or the neighborhood. Just because I live in an area doesn't mean I know every street or every subdivision or, every part of town. And so when it comes to real estate and personal safety, realtors are exposed, right? We're exposed in a lot of ways. We're exposed not just for going into properties, we're exposed with meeting people like we may not otherwise know. We're exposed through marketing and branding. If you go on my website, my pictures are everywhere, my phone number is everywhere, right? And so that is, some people look at that as like that's an issue.
Mhm.
Thankfully, I've been in this business, like I said, almost 20 years, and I haven't had any issues. And I don't even recall once you asked me to, come on tonight, I was trying to think, have I ever really felt unsafe or where I was in a compromising position? And honestly, I couldn't recall anything, right?
That's
So I'm
great.
thankful. I'm thankful for that because our position is so public. That's not the case for everyone, right?
Mhm.
And so there are certain measures and certain things that we should do as agents and realtors to, ensure our safety. And I've been in this business, like I said, almost 2 decades. And so when you first start out in this business, people become realtors, not necessarily thinking they're going to grow up to be a realtor, right? Some
Mhm.
people do if it's in their family. But when people tend to get into this business, it might be a second career,
Mhm.
right? Or a part-time job or a part-time hustle, right? And so what draws people to real estate is the opportunity to make really good, stable income, right? And so with that, when you first get started and you haven't built a business up yet, you may be dealing with a lot more strangers, right? People
Mhm.
that you don't know. Well, I've been in it almost 20 years, so I don't really, at this time and over the last several years, I don't necessarily work with people that haven't been referred to me.
Okay.
Right. So that's
Okay.
one way that I ensure my safety for the most
Mhm.
part. You're not just calling me up. You're not just telling me you saw me online. Like that doesn't really work for me anymore. Right.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean I don't need business and it doesn't mean that I'm trying to discriminate, but I built my business up to the point where one, my clients are satisfied. So they're referring me. Right.
Right.
And so even though I do market myself and put myself out there, it still tends to come from people that I know. And so I
Mhm.
think that's very important for women and men because, I know this is geared towards the women, but,
Mhm.
men get assaulted too. So, you know, we all just have to be careful. But I
Right.
think when we're first starting in this industry and the money is a big draw to this industry, that we can't just take on any client, right? Like we really need to do our due diligence and we need to do that across the board, right?
Mhm.
But it just so happens that a lot of people I work with have referred me and I trust the people that have referred them to me,
Right.
and so there's that commonality, there's, relationship there.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean things can't happen,
Yeah.
but the likelihood
Mhm.
is less, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I fared pretty well, thankfully,
Mhm.
since I've been in this industry.
Now you mentioned something about you can't just take anyone as a client. So I'm curious as to what would be some red flags for you. What would be like, okay, something happened. I'm like, I don't know about taking that person as my client.
Well, what I'll say is this because I have to watch how I frame it. I'm glad you said that. We don't discriminate, so we have to be very careful because we are in this business, and people
Right.
could feel they're being discriminated against, right? So we
Mhm.
don't want to do that. So there's ways that we have to frame it where it's not coming off as, well, wait a minute, you deal with them, but not me, right? And
Mhm.
so I would always say, especially as women, we have to trust our guts. We have to do that a lot more. So if there was just how I'll give you an example. I did have one time a young man call me and wanted to see a property in Baltimore, right? And so I was just like, okay, this sounds a little bogus, right? Like just
Mhm.
instinctively, like this
Right.
isn't making a lot of sense. He kept trying to tell me that he wanted to see a property. He kept, and I told him, well, do you have a pre-approval? Like, so I start, just going through my checklist, and he didn't have one yet. And I'm like, well, no, I don't see clients that don't have pre-approvals yet, right? Because
Right.
that's the first step. You've
Mhm.
purchased a house, right? So if you don't have that, to me, you're not serious or
Right.
not serious enough yet where I need to take you out. So even when I
Mhm.
told him no, he was still trying to say, well, I just want to see the property. I'm thinking about it. But, he tried to reframe it so many times. And I'm just like, no, it's not happening, sir. Right.
Yeah.
And I finally told him, like, don't just find me on Facebook or social media and think you can call me and come out to a property. Don't ever do that. Right. Because it
Mhm.
doesn't work like that, at least not for me. So that's the first thing I would say. Trust your gut, go through I would say, our professional checklist, right? If things
Yeah.
aren't adding up, if you start asking professional questions and the answers just aren't making sense, like, do you have a
Mhm.
pre-approval? No, you don't. Well, sir, this is how I do business. I don't
Right.
show properties without pre-approval, right? So
Mhm.
that's number one. And then it's hard to describe the feeling that you'll get. We tend
Yeah.
to know when things are off, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes we ignore those feelings, and we have to do a better job at using our intuition. I call it like radar, right? It picks
Yeah.
up signals,
Yeah.
for a reason. And just the
Mhm.
fact that, I'm a woman and this area is just, it's so diverse. It's so many people. There's so many properties. There's
Mhm.
so many neighborhoods, nooks and crannies. Let me tell you, when I first got started, my truck, I had a wrapped truck. So I always said, well, if somebody sees my truck and it had my face all over it, and phone number all over it, if someone sees my truck sitting for a long period of time, if something
Mhm.
happened to me, hopefully, someone be like, wait a minute, this
Right.
realtor's car has been here forever. So
Right.
I looked at my truck as a backup in case
Yeah.
something, would have happened to me. But we can't discriminate, but what we can do is do more due diligence and ask questions, right? And when
Yes.
you ask enough questions, then you'll start to see if that makes sense. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times, maybe these folks that don't mean us well, they haven't thought that far down in advance. And
Right.
so you'll be able, as a professional, not to stump them, but to kind of catch them where they thought
Mhm.
they had you, be like, nah, this isn't working, right?
Right.
And you can always refer them to someone else, right? Or you could just say, you know what, you might want to call another brokerage or this or that or whatever you need to do, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I would say, as far as we don't work with everyone. You just have to be careful, because it's not just about money. Your
Right.
livelihood, your life
Mhm.
is important, right? So
Exactly.
it truly is safety first.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I know you mentioned before about you having that kind of sixth sense, if you will, spidey sense, some people would say,
Yeah.
to be able to determine if something just seems a little bit off. I think that speaks to the experience you had in the field and just, but would you also say it has something to do with you knowing the people? Are you originally from the DMV area?
No, so I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from upstate New York, but I've
Hmm.
been here for 34 years. So I've been
Okay.
here longer than I've been
Long
home.
enough.
So
Yeah.
technically,
Yeah.
I might as well say I'm a DMV, baby, or no, not a baby, but I'm native, right? My family
Yeah.
is from this area originally, but no,
Mhm.
I think it is just me having the relationships with folks, because I am very much in the community, right? So
Mhm.
I've gotten to know a lot of people over the years, right?
Okay.
And if you're a good realtor, you do a lot of networking, you do community service, so you're out, you're meeting folks. And I just think it's tied into, again, I can't express it enough, because I definitely feel as women, we don't feel it. But later we'll say something didn't feel right. right?
Exactly.
I
Don't
mean, how many
trust
times
that
have we said
intuition.
that? We might have said that about a relationship, right?
Yep.
Something didn't feel right. And
Yeah.
so I just want to, if nothing else, express over this platform that it's okay to feel those feelings because those feelings are coming up. Protect
Hmm.
yourself, right? And
Yeah.
just the general dynamics of how we deal with each other, right? You
Hmm.
just know when someone is maybe looking at you in an off way,
Yeah.
trying to get your attention. And it's funny because of the show I was thinking about earlier, saying something on my Facebook. Like sometimes men will try to use, they want to see a property to get to know me. Who does that, right? You're
Yeah.
leveraging my job, right?
Right.
My profession to act like you're interested, not in a criminal way, but
Right.
still to try to
Yeah.
get in front of me,
Hmm.
And I'm like, so that's happened a couple times, right?
Wow.
And I'm just like, no, you don't really seem very serious. Like, yeah,
Right.
you want to waste my time. And so I think it's just being open, right? Just
Yeah.
being open to receive, not moving too quickly, not being
Hmm.
too hasty, not thinking about, okay, well, again, that money piece is a lot, right? Because
Right.
times are hard. And so I would say those things have just served me well, right?
That
And
I
just
could
knowing to
definitely.
yourself, all money is not good money. So if you got
Hmm.
funny feelings, like you could even feel that way in your business. Maybe you got some clients, you're like,
Exactly.
I don't know if I want to deal with them. Something doesn't feel right, right? It could be
I've had to turn some people down. I've had to. It wasn't very many, but there's some that my senses were going off like, okay, maybe you might want to consider some less than lethal options. Maybe we're not a good fit for you. Like
right, right.
that
You
type
have
of
to see.
conversation. Like honestly, because definitely things can feel off, and you do get that sense. So it's one of those things. But as far as someone trying to hit on me at work, I was actually ironically just talking to my husband about that earlier today, and I was like, I think I'm so grateful that I'm in this field because if someone's coming to see me, I'm teaching them how to shoot. So they already have an understanding that I shoot. So
Right.
I typically don't have guys trying to hit on me. I mean,
Exactly.
one, they already know that I'm married most of the time. And
That doesn't
then
stop enough of them though, but
it
I
doesn't.
understand.
It
Right.
doesn't. But it changes things when they know my husband is an armor and my husband is a firearm instructor as well. That changes things.
As it should.
Yes. So I think that that has some points to it as well. Thank you so much for being on here again, JQ. So is this even a safe job? Was her question. That's a good
Um,
question.
yes, hi Biandra. Is it a safe job? Overall, yes, right? However, just like any other job or, any other position that's public facing, right? So let's give another example of a public facing job, a newscaster, right?
Hmm.
Like they're always on television. There's things that happen to newscasters too, right?
Yes.
Like, right, especially, women. So is it safe overall? I would say yes. I would say, but still, you would need to, just have some safety precautions in place. And I see you
Mhm.
said, can they pair you up with a man? When you're an agent, most times you're an independent contractor. So no one's you're not working for anyone, right? Even though I'm affiliated with a brokerage, I'm an
Mhm.
independent contractor. So my broker is not necessarily my boss. And it's not their job to say, okay, Stephanie, will you go out with Sam today and show properties? No one's going to do that
Right.
for you, right? To answer your question, Biandra. So that's something where you bring up a good point. When showing properties, yeah, you can do that in pairs if you'd like. I suggest it. Doesn't necessarily have to be a man, could be another woman, right? It's really going to depend because remember, everybody's in business for themselves. So if I have to go show properties on Saturday, and I want one of my team members, Joy, to come with me, well, I may be taking Joy from her business, right? And
Mhm.
so I might have to compensate Joy, say, Joy, can you come with me to show two houses? I'll pay you for your time. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so there's different ways to look at that. or you may just have a partner in business already
Yeah.
that, you may be able to do that. But most oftentimes, or a spouse, it's okay, a spouse or a significant other can go with you. But again, when clients want to see properties, that doesn't mean that other person is available, right?
Yeah.
That you may want to go out with. And so, unfortunately, we can't base our business on the schedules of other people,
Right.
right? If you're that, I just say if you're that scared or afraid, then you might want to consider another business then, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times our business is taking people to see properties,
Right.
right? Or if we're working with a seller, going into their house and sitting down with them and consulting with them and so on and so forth. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, someone's
Mad
thinking about
woman
getting a
to
gun.
get a
I
gun.
know that's why I'm at this trouble, right? That's what I'm working on. I'm working
Yes.
on getting a gun, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, my daughter has joined me, open houses. I'll definitely suggest to agents.
Yeah.
So open houses are when the property, well, there's two types of open houses, but one
Okay.
is agent specific. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually held on Tuesdays or sometimes during the week, and that's just for realtor professionals, real estate professionals. And then typically on the weekends or evenings, you'll see public open houses. That's when anyone can come to visit the
Oh.
property. And
Okay.
so, depending on the property, the square footage of the property, where the property is located, right? I
Mhm.
may have more than one agent in the property, right? And
Yeah.
then you can also have a significant other, a spouse, right? Someone
Yeah,
there.
that's what
And
James just said. James said his wife was a realtor and he would be there with her at times to see properties or at least be outside the truck. So
exactly.
that was
See,
good.
James, we
Mm-hmm.
love good hubbies like yourself. Yeah,
Yes.
and so in particular for open houses, it's for two reasons. Definitely safety, but then also, especially if it's a beautiful home somewhere, and you're expecting a decent crowd, you can't entertain everybody, right?
Right.
Somebody needs to be stationary. Somebody can be walking around and showing the property and answering questions. So you could have at least 2 to 3 people. But safety is definitely a reason. A couple years ago here in Virginia, further out, a woman was assaulted at an open house.
Oh
And
wow.
thankfully, she knew I think she had a black belt training
Okay.
anyway. And so
Okay.
she was able to defend herself, but she was
Mm-hmm.
hit several times in her head,
Oh.
like blunt force trauma. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but thankfully she's still around, right? But
Mm-hmm.
every year, there are countless activities, criminal activities, right? That
Mm-hmm.
are taken out against agents, even robberies like ATMs. Like,
Right.
again, my face was all over my truck, right?
Right.
And so people can see that I'm a realtor. And then let's just say I went to an ATM and I'm not paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not even noticing. Someone's thinking, oh, she's a real estate agent. She's attractive. Oh, she probably makes good money, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, and that's actually happened. That happened, I
Mm-hmm.
think, recently to an agent in Florida, to a gentleman, right?
Wow.
So he was assaulted, right?
Mhm.
And robbed,
I think
taking
it
money
kind
out
of
of ATM.
goes for those type of robberies. I think it kind of goes hand in hand in good favor that a lot of people just don't carry cash anymore. So if someone's trying to rob you, they would have to take you to somewhere else where you can use your card to take money out. So that would be even a hassle. So I would,
Exactly, but
yeah, I can see how
it'll
that's
be a
less and
hassle,
less with
but
that.
you know that they do that. And
Yeah.
the hardest part about that is you almost got to fight for your life before they can get you to another location. That's what I've always heard when it comes to
Yes.
safety. Like, try not to
Mhm.
have them get overwhelm you to the point where now you're being taken somewhere else, because a lot of
Exactly.
times that doesn't end well, right?
Mhm.
And
Now,
so
I
you
want to
got to,
go to the questions real quick because I
uh-huh.
see Big Daddy asks, Big Daddy 444 said, have you shown any homes that has squatters that lived in them?
No, not in my 20 years. No.
Good,
And
good.
that's actually really good. And it does happen. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much in a metropolitan area. even
Mhm.
though we have suburbs here in Virginia and Maryland,
Yeah.
and rural areas as well.
Mhm.
But for squatters to get into a house where people aren't aware, that means the listing agent, is not going to check on that property enough, right? Or
Okay.
other real estate professionals aren't in there to make
Mhm.
certain that squatters aren't in the property. But
So
the,
take me back to that process. So
Mhm.
when a place is selected to be on the list of homes, how does that work? Whose responsibility is it to be in there to kind of check for squatters and things?
So the person who lists the property, right? The person that works for the seller, right?
Mhm.
Because the seller is selling the home. So if the seller doesn't live there anymore, right? I mean, because not often we find squatters in a house where a family actually lives, right?
Right.
It's usually when the house is vacant. And
Mhm.
so for me, that would be the listing agent's responsibility. You have this
Okay.
property on the market, right? And
Mhm.
you're trying to sell it, you're marketing it to sell it for your sellers. So you need to make sure, right? Let's say those sellers moved out of the area, they're gone.
Mhm.
So that property is your responsibility,
I
right?
see.
You got
I
the
see.
lockbox on there, you got your sign outside.
Mhm.
That's not my job as a buyer's agent. When I go to that house, I'm not expecting to find anyone in that house. But if you're the listing agent and you haven't been to that property in 4 weeks, well, then there's a chance somebody could live in there because
Yeah.
people are always monitoring properties. And
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, I would say it's the listing agent that
Mhm.
needs to be on top of that,
Mhm.
because that's their goal to sell it. And you
Yeah.
don't want to go into a property and find squatters because sometimes they're in there and they're destroying the property, right?
Right.
And so then that's an expense and that's an issue for your seller. So
Mhm.
that would be the listing agent. And the only
Now.
way we would find out is if I'm working with the buyer and I show a property and someone's in there.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's
Well,
never happened to me, thankfully.
I'm so glad as well. I'm so glad as
Yeah,
well.
never happened.
Definitely. Well, we're gonna pray that nothing else, like continuing that you're not
Exactly.
a victim of any of that as well. So, while we have people here, I just want to go ahead and reiterate that definitely this is a safe place to ask questions. If you guys have questions, we'll do our best to ask those questions and keeping comments respectful. Please feel free to make the comments, but keep them respectful. And while you're on here, if you like what you see and you like what you hear us talking about, we hope that you have subscribed to the channel, and that way you'll be back and be able to get notifications when we post new videos and go live every Friday at 8. So, but anyway, I see someone, DM Renovations. Thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me again. I love seeing you here. um, okay, so he said he's a little confused on who gets rid of the squatters. That's a good question.
Well,
No
that's
worries.
yeah. Well, it depends on what we mean by get rid of. Out of the house, I would think that the listing agent and the seller will call authorities. However, there's been instances, long-term squatters, it's very difficult to get them out of folks' house. So then you're talking about court,
Mhm.
you're talking about other things like that. But let's just say some homeless folks that saw the house was empty and wanted to get in there, you would call the authorities. Again, that's the seller owns the property. But what I'm
Right.
saying is if the sellers are not there and the listing agent is responsible for selling the property, then the listing agent would have to let that seller know there's
Hmm.
squatters in your home, right?
Right.
But if the listing agent is going and checking on the property and making sure doors are locked, windows are closed, as much as possible,
Hmm.
then hopefully that will prevent that situation from happening. But legally, it's the seller's home. I'm
Right.
just saying, as far as showing the property,
Hmm.
I would, as a listing agent, I would feel that's partly my responsibility to make sure no one's entering that property while I'm responsible for selling it.
That makes a lot of sense to me too. So when
Right.
it comes to the whole self-defense aspect of you being in the property, showing the home, do you have like a, I don't want to, pinpoint everything you do for your own personal safety, but if you could pinpoint
Right.
like one or two things that you specifically do, like make sure you keep the door unlocked, or make sure you have the door open, or make sure nobody ever walks behind you, or is there
Yeah,
certain
I mean, you
procedures like
basically
that?
saying it all. Like, yeah, you basically have said it.
Hmm.
So it's a couple things with that. I do let my clients, I'll open the door and let them go in first, right?
Okay.
I don't like people walking behind me necessarily anyway, right?
Yeah,
So I think it's personal preference, right? Every agent is not going to do this the same way, right?
exactly.
But I tend to let my clients go in first, and I follow them. And
Mhm.
definitely, basements, lower levels. Again, I'm not taking out people I'm not comfortable with. So that's a
Yeah.
different scenario. And so what I would say is sometimes I'll just let the clients go down. Again,
Mhm.
if you get a feeling, right, then I wouldn't suggest doing it. Be like, hey, you guys, take a look at the basement. You don't necessarily have to go down, right? You just
Exactly.
tell them to take a look. And if it's a house that they want to eventually purchase, you can always go back and walk the house and do that on your own, right? If you
Mhm.
feel uncomfortable in that moment. When it comes to like the front door and stuff like that, when we go into a property, got to remember, I don't know if I want to keep that door open because strangers could come in too behind us, right?
That
So
makes
I
sense.
tend to
Yeah.
close the front door. So it's not always the people that you're with. It could also be letting folks in behind you. So
Mhm.
I tend to close the door.
I'm laughing
You
at
said,
their
I'm sure you don't
impersonations.
show houses in Baltimore. We're not going to discriminate against Baltimore, but no, what I do and I don't, not often, but I have sold properties and shown properties in Baltimore. But like I'm trying to share, I've pretty much developed relationships. So I'm taking out people that I'm somewhat familiar with,
Exactly.
which decreases the likelihood of me being assaulted in a
Mhm.
property. But to your point, lights on, right? Like, and sometimes what an agent will do is if I tell the client, okay, we're going to meet at the property at 3,
Mhm.
I may get there at 2:45, right? Because I'm going to get
Mhm.
inside the house, turn on all the lights, and acclimate myself to the house. Because
Right.
God forbid something happens. It's your first time in, it's their first time in, and you don't know how to get out, or you don't know other ways, maybe, you know,
Yes.
to leave the property, right?
Mhm.
So that's another thing that you can do, right?
Yeah.
Is acclimate yourself to the property, all the lights on. But before any of that, a lot of agents now work from home. Again, we're
Right.
independent contractors most times. So this is not like we have a boss and we got to let people know what we're doing. It's your own business. But when I first started in real estate, my brokerage, Long and Foster, I would go into an office.
Mhm.
And back then, the procedure was if you showed a property, you got the folks' driver's license, copied it, let office staff know where you were going, right?
Mhm.
And I've done that several times back then. But now it's like I'll let my family know where I am. I don't
Yeah.
really use any of those apps, right?
Mhm.
Because again, my situation is just a little different. But I still let folks know where I'm going, the address is where I'm going. You
Right.
understand? And
Mhm.
so that's helpful, but that was something, and I still suggest people do that, especially if you don't know folks. And then now
Exactly.
with social media, you can look up, you can
Mhm.
research people. Most times people have some social media, right?
Yeah.
And so you can Google their name to get an idea, of who they
Mhm.
are as best as possible, right? You can try to do some due diligence before you take these folks out.
And
But
that
I
makes
would
a lot
always
of
say
sense.
let folks know
Scope it
where you're
out.
going.
Yeah, scope out the place in advance. I think that was a really great tip, honestly, for anybody who's in this field to scope out the lay of the lands. So you could know
Yep.
the entrance and the exits and how you can get in and out quickly. That's a really good tip right there. That's probably the most important one, honestly. um,
Yeah, you try to
yeah.
get there a little earlier so
Hmm.
that you can acclimate yourself. Turn on the light, and then you kind of did a tour. Because let me tell you, I've been in so many houses; they all start to look alike after a while. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
There's
Hmm.
bedrooms on a certain level.
Yeah.
There's kitchens, there's dining rooms, there's a den, there may be open floor plan, closed floor plan, lower
Hmm.
level, theater room, open room. I mean, it's after a while, they all look
Pretty
alike.
standard. Yeah.
So I also am the no pressure agent. If I get a feel my clients just want to walk the property, I don't need to walk right behind them. Go ahead
Exactly.
because I can already mentally recall what I just saw to answer
Hmm.
questions or pull up the photos on my cell phone, right?
Yeah.
So I also do that too. right?
Mm-hmm. That
So
makes
there's
sense. Yeah.
ways to not put yourself in a position right up under,
Yeah.
the client. And if someone says to me, well, can you come look at this? That would make me kind of come look. Why do you need me to come look at it? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've never had that happen. That would make me kind of like a little
Mm-hmm.
weary. So
Yeah.
yeah, you
Well,
just
I
always
think
got to be alert.
I probably did say something like that looking at some properties before. Tell my realtor, hey, I'm curious about this such and such. Can you tell me a little bit about that? So I may have called them to come and look at something with me, but I do remember them allowing us to kind of walk around for ourselves and see the property a little bit without them being right up on us. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes, again, it's going to depend on the client. But if I got a
Hmm.
man and a woman together, I'm wondering, why do they both need me right now? Like,
Yeah.
what is it you're trying to? Because again, that happens where a woman is used to lure a woman into
Yes.
a situation. So if I
Yes.
got two people and
Hmm.
y'all both need me in the same space at the same time,
Hmm. A
hold
good
that thought.
response would be like, what's the name of the person that's supposed to inspect the inspector?
Right.
I'd be like,
And that's
well,
what I
I'll
always
jot that
tell
down for the
people.
inspector.
Yeah, and I tell people
Yes.
that all the time. I'm not an inspector, and I'm not
Right.
about to start assessing the property or
Hmm.
giving my feedback necessarily too in
Right.
depth because one, people will hold you to it. Two, that's
Hmm.
not my wheelhouse. I'm a realtor, right? Now
Exactly.
I know enough
Exactly.
to know certain things, but I don't cross over into other people's lanes as much as possible
Hmm.
because I don't want to give misinformation,
That makes
especially as
sense.
it relates. Yeah. And so
Now
therefore
on
you don't
that,
really need my help.
on, on that note, DMV Renovations had a solution for that. He said you can wear a body cam.
That too. Look, that too.
Yeah. So Michael asks, you deal with people who are losing a home to, and that may also be emotional. So
Oh, sure.
can you tell
Well,
us a
let me
little bit
tell
about
you,
that?
real estate is emotional for people losing a home, trying to buy a home, trying to sell a home. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
but to your point, when they're losing a home through maybe foreclosure or a short sale, meaning they're having, challenges as far as making their mortgage payments, of
Yeah.
course it is emotional because people work so hard to purchase a house, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to maintain it. So we understand. And so yes, people can act up. And back when the market crashed in 2006, 2007. Oh, you would go into houses, they would be damaged. People were ripping things out the wall, just
Oh
extra
wow.
things that they had paid for and,
Mm-hmm.
just damaging houses, right? Because they
Yeah.
were upset. And so, yeah, yeah, you never know what you're going to meet when you cross over into someone's residence, right? You
Exactly.
hope you hope that it's listed and the listing agent and the people that are involved, the sellers that you may never see, are on the up and up. But
Exactly.
we never know. And guess what? It's not even about the house sometimes. People just have a bad day, period. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter, right? People
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, everybody is so unhinged that
Mm-hmm.
it does not take much for people to, try their luck, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yes, Michael, that is very common. And it's hard. It's hard
Mm-hmm.
when you do experience that and working with a client that is potentially losing their property.
Hmm. Well, I know we're working on the gun situation, having
Mhm.
concealed carry permit. But do you have other tools like, I don't know, maybe like a remote alarm? You know how you have those batteries that sounds a bit loud sound, or some other kind of less than lethal, like taser, pepper spray. Any people you know work with those type of things as well?
Oh, I'm sure agents do carry those things, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to.
Yeah.
I think I've been, investigated into some companies that, worked with women and, some self-defense. I can't think of the name right now. You probably know better than me. And
Mm-hmm.
I was going to order, some tasers, some spray and things
Okay.
like that. But yes, agents definitely do have those things.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
I
I
just
do
haven't.
I do know of companies that do offer, and I'll refer you to later, but I do know of companies that do offer specific training for realtors, honestly,
Mhm,
particularly women, to help you do like a walkthrough scenario or how can you respond and how can you react to this situation type of
mhm.
thing. So I think those are really good things. Do you
Oh yeah,
find that
definitely.
they have trainings like that available for
They do.
organizations
So
often?
they do. I just haven't always taken advantage. For instance, there was an
Mhm.
agent that was killed some years ago. Her
Mhm.
son's actually in her name, Carter. Betty, I think it was Carter, out in the Midwest. She was lured into a home and was killed and kidnapped and killed by a
Wow.
couple. See, that's what I said, that whole couple thing.
Yep.
And so her son actually started a foundation because September is Realtor Safety Month
Mhm.
nationally. And so, they started real estate agent training specifically in remembrance
Okay.
of,
That's
or he
nice.
did in remembrance of his mom. And
Mhm.
so that's known throughout. But yes, there are companies that do offer it.
Mhm.
Um, I've never taken any classes in person. I've read things online, right? Because they also provide
Mhm.
information online too.
Yeah.
But yes, it's very important. And especially even now, it's just, it may not even be the seller or the buyer. Sometimes it's just people in the community. Like one
Right.
of our agents in Maryland was killed, and it was a gentleman in an
Mm.
open house in
Mhm.
a model home, right? So model
Mhm.
home, I'm sure your viewers have seen new construction community, brand new development,
Mhm.
model home. The agent was sitting in the home working, but in the home, maybe there were no visitors, and an 18-year-old boy assaulted and killed him. So
Wow.
men get hurt
That's
too.
serious.
Yeah, and that was locally. That's in Maryland. So we've
Mhm.
had our share of events too. I think that was maybe during COVID. I want to say 2020,
Mhm.
but it was in Hanover, Maryland. So
Wow.
yeah.
So Michael asks, you deal with people who I'm sorry, not Michael, I'm sorry. There was another question. Oh, it was Big Daddy 444. Ever had any racist sellers that didn't want to sell to people of color?
If I did Big Daddy 444, I didn't know, right? Because that's discriminatory. And so if
Mhm.
I did have a client that said, well, Stephanie, I don't want to sell to people that look like you. One, that'd be a little weird because they're
Yeah.
like, why are you working with me? But to his point, there are people that feel that way. Oh,
Yeah.
very much so. But they can't share that with us because then we can't represent them, right? We
Mhm.
cannot represent. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right?
I believe
But
that's I believe that's kind of what happened with my home, honestly. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle there. Yeah, I'm not going to go into details to protect everyone around that, but we definitely have a story as far as that. I would want to say that it was the will of God. Because some language was used. My realtor was
oh,
called an N word, and because of that, we were able to negotiate some things. Um,
wow.
yeah, and it was like wow. And the people who were selling the home, they refused to meet us, see us. They didn't want to have anything to do with us. So yeah,
Hmm.
he said, "Tell the story."
Yeah. So it does happen, right? We're dealing in
Yeah.
the United States of
Mhm.
America. We see, where we are today. It does
Mhm.
happen, but to his point, as far as the agent or the buyer can say, "Well, Stephanie, don't take me to a house where any black people live or any brown people are," right? And
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work because I'm not going through a list to find out who lives where, right? That's just not
Exactly.
how we are supposed to do business. So as realtors, if we hear that type
Mhm.
of language, then we cannot do business with them, right?
Yeah.
And so we get tested too. And so I
Mhm.
can't have that and then lose my license and my livelihood. This is how I take care of
Exactly.
my family. But to your point, it does happen. Now, I will
Mhm.
say this too when it comes to buyers and sellers meeting, oftentimes it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying in your case it wasn't racist or discriminatory, but
Mhm.
just to let folks know, buyers and sellers don't necessarily meet each other. They don't talk
Exactly.
to each other, right?
Mhm.
What happens is the two agents, the listing agent selling the house for the
Mhm.
sellers and the buyer agent working with the buyer, we are the deal, right? So
Okay.
that's why it's very important that people pick great agents because your
Mhm.
agent can make or break the deal because most times the two clients on either side of the table never even get to know each other, right?
Right.
Like you don't even
Mhm.
settle together anymore. Back in the day, it was a little bit different, but
Mhm.
now with social media and different schedules and just all types of stuff, you
Yeah.
don't ever have to see each other.
We definitely
And
saw each other on the passing, and they
okay.
made their point to not communicate at all. Like we were like, "Hey," and they was just like straight face gone that direction,
And let me
and we were
tell you,
like,
and
"Oh,
sometimes people have been told to be that way for a couple reasons. One,
okay."
because they don't want to get the word emotional. They don't want to
Oh.
interfere with the deal at all. Straight
Mhm.
face, don't take in any noise, right?
Mhm.
Distracting information, let their agent handle it,
That
right?
makes sense. Okay.
Yep, yep. And so that could be it too. But again,
Mhm.
I'm not discounting what you felt
Yeah.
or what you saw, but I'm just
Mhm.
saying sometimes they've been told no dealings.
Yeah.
We'll handle this, right?
Okay.
And so that could be it as well, right?
Well,
Because
I've never heard
you
that
never
perspective.
know.
So.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
never know how that could turn out. And so it's just best to leave the transaction
Mhm.
to the licensed parties.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So just in
Well,
case
that's what's
somebody else
up.
has that come up. It may not be what we think it is, but if you feel some kind of way, it might be. So I'm
Yeah.
not discounting, but I just know I've even told my client, I got this, right? Less is
Mhm.
more. Don't share, don't talk. Because sometimes people will start going and going and going and going, and then they're giving away the house. They're doing all types of stuff. They're
Yeah.
saying things, right? And you're like, what are you
Mhm.
doing here? Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's business too.
Yeah. So, oh, someone said that their seller asked them why they wanted to move to that neighborhood. Ah.
What I'd love to know, Beyondra, what this neighborhood means. Is it mean a neighborhood of color or what is it? Tell me more about what that means. And again, I'm just telling you all the laws, right? But we know
Mhm.
people break laws. We know people discriminate. We know people are racist, right? We know, oh, why you want to move to a predominantly white neighborhood? Yeah, well, that was a very inappropriate question for that agent.
Yeah.
So you could have
Yeah.
reported that agent, right?
Mhm.
Because that's something a bit. Now, if they were asking for that, or if that's what you felt, or were they saying, because I always gotta frame it, were they saying, what is it about this neighborhood that makes what? Is it close to your job? Is it you like the home? Do you like the developer? Like, so it depends on how they asked you. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they weren't alluding to what you're saying,
Mhm.
but there's reasons why I asked my client, well, what is it about this house that you like?
Right.
Right? Why this one over this one? Right? Because
Mhm.
I want to hear them tell me, right? So
Yeah.
that I can make sure we are going to present an offer on the house that works for them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not asking based on race or, any other factors other than, okay, what makes you want this property? Is it what you really want,
Mhm.
right? Because when we write this offer, if it gets accepted, you're committing to this property, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through and fine tune and make sure it makes sense for you,
That makes sense
right?
to ask in that
Yeah.
way for that reason. Oh wow. So you
Oh,
said
she
you
said
the
she's the
only
only
one.
black.
Yeah, the only one to this day. That got to be tough.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
and the HOA bothers you constantly. Oh wow, the HOAs. Oh gosh, let me ask you to shed some light on HOA while we're on that topic. Now,
yeah.
have you seen a, increase in HOA companies just in properties since from the time you started to now?
Most properties are HOA, right?
Hmm.
Most properties. So unless you're like, let's say in the city or maybe out rural or just an area where, folks could build a house back in the day, like if you have a house that's older,
Hmm.
most subdivisions or neighborhoods are HOA, right?
Right.
Most of them are, right?
Hmm.
The HOA is not always a bad thing because think about it, and maybe you haven't experienced it yet. Do you have anyone in your community that doesn't upkeep their property? Because
Right.
that's when you
Not
really want the
for real.
HOA to, right? They
Yeah.
don't cut their grass. They have 6 cars parked in front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
They have the side of the house needs to be power washed. There's, mildew and mold on it, right? So that's
Right.
when we want the HOA to do their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to if we feel we're being harassed or every little thing is a problem, then that's an issue. But I would say, I mean, as long as they're building more developments, then they're going to have more and more homeowners associations, right?
Right. Right.
And so,
What
yeah.
advice would you have if you felt like you're being harassed by your HOA? What advice would you have for that person to do?
Well, I always tell people, first of all, when I'm helping buyers buy, you really need to read those HOA docs. But most
Yeah.
people aren't reading them. I mean, you're not going to read all because many of them are like hundreds, if not thousands of pages long, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
really need to go through the HOA docs to the best of your ability because you are given a certain amount of days, right?
Right.
And see, does this community potentially align with what I want, right? And
Yeah.
you're only going to learn so much before you buy the house. But what I
Mm-hmm.
always tell my buyers is you got to get involved. Get involved in the HOA. You need
Yeah.
to know what's going on. You're just owning your property, but you have no idea what they're looking at, what they're doing, what they're voting on, what they're charging for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not involved. And then we
Yeah.
complain about it. So, really, that is what I tell my folks,
Okay.
right?
That makes
Get
sense.
involved. Yep. Get
Mm-hmm.
involved so you know what's going on. Not just, oh my gosh, they just raised the HOA fee,
Yeah.
right? But why did they do that?
Yeah.
Who voted for that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would tell folks. And then as far as complaints, I'm not exactly sure of depending on your HOA, the chain of command, how
Yeah.
you would, send complaints to the HOA. But that's
Yeah.
what I would do, just everything in writing or email, right?
Mm-hmm.
With all the details to the powers that be. But I think a large part of what we experience with HOAs could be proactively addressed
Yeah.
by being a member of the HOA.
Yeah. That makes sense. Become a part of it. Yeah. So I
More brown
definitely,
faces. So, Briandra, join that HOA so they can back up off of you.
yes, definitely do that, Beyondre, for sure.
Yeah, make yourself known. Yeah.
Yes. So I definitely appreciate you giving this insight. I know I've learned some things, and I'm definitely going to get more involved in my HOA. I know you were speaking to me too when you said that.
And me too. Like I
Yeah,
still got to get involved with my HOA. And let
yeah,
me tell you, my HOA, I'm like, okay, the week that I moved here, they were talking about the step up into my door. I'm in a townhouse. The one step, they were sending me a letter need to be power washed. I called them immediately. I said, now wait a minute. I just moved here this week. I'm already getting a notice from the HOA.
that
And,
happened to
and
us
she
too.
apologized. She ended up
Yep.
apologizing. She said, please disregard. Exactly. Because now you're
Yeah,
out of hand, right?
yeah,
Like this
yeah,
property just got sold and you're sending me to power wash a stuff. I haven't even been here to use this, to walk in and out of my door enough yet.
yeah, yeah. They told us we
So,
had a gate that we needed to fix. I was like, y'all gonna have to give us some time. We literally just moved in. Like, give us some time.
and you know
Yeah,
what? That might have been actually, again, the gate, my stuff, things that the previous sellers were supposed to do. So it carries
exactly.
over with the property.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so
Yeah.
if your agent didn't look at those things, there's a list that comes in your HOA docs that says
Mm-hmm.
things that the seller should remedy. And
Yeah.
so, not that the HOA can prevent them from selling the house, but they may not do what they should do. So then it falls on you. So that's
I'm looking at
all
that
part of
cut.
that inspection. Like, yep, that's why I got to look at those, HOA docs. But
Yes.
I hope I've given you all enough information on, just the safety
Mm-hmm.
aspects, of being a realtor. It's an amazing career, but just
Yeah.
like so many other positions, we just got to be aware of our surroundings
Mm-hmm.
and the people that we're choosing to work with. Because for us, it's a business. So we actually are making a choice,
Right.
right? To work with people. And so I would just say be aware, pay attention to your intuition, learn your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to do your due diligence. Oh, I do want to mention one thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Taking buyers to see properties. I do not ride anyone in my car. I
Oh.
meet clients at the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason nowadays. Well, let me take that back. I rode one lady recently. I haven't had anyone in my car in like, I don't know. It's probably been like decade, like long time, long, long time, because I don't think that's safe, right?
No.
And so I would suggest being careful with that too, right? Clients can meet you at the property as
Yeah.
well. So that's another thing that I think, agents should look at that. Do I have to have someone in the car with me? Yeah, you might think you're providing this, amazing 5-star service,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do it, you're supposed to do it for everybody because again, we can get, reported for discriminatory practices.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I said, I haven't had anyone in my car in forever because I just don't think it's safe.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the comments.
What
I'm
did
looking
Meta
at the
say?
comments.
If they have no car, well, let me say something, Meta. Let me say something. I was going to share with you a little tip that's not necessarily true. Let me tell you why, especially for a new buyer.
Mm-hmm.
If we get someone that wants to buy a home and they don't have a car, in some ways that's good because remember, if you're looking to buy a house, we're looking at your debts. Most time
Mm-hmm.
people will have a car loan. That's a debt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So let's say that person does have money to buy a car, they just haven't bought it yet. We'll always tell them wait till you buy the house first. There is a whole program called House Before the Car, right? Because we
Wow.
know a car is not even, an asset, right?
Well, we
And
have a
so you
story about
always,
a car too.
huh?
We have a story about a car as well. They waited 30 days approximately before we were ready to sign to tell us we had to pay off a car that was up to date on the bill. We owed, I don't know, like maybe $12,000, $15,000 more on the car. We had to pay the car off before we can
You
buy the
bought your
house.
house.
Yeah.
So see, but
Yeah.
that speaks to my point. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to tell Meta.
Oh,
I get
16K.
what he or she is saying,
Mm-hmm.
but you actually don't want that debt. Because what
Mm-hmm.
that does is that decreases your pre-approval amount. So
Yeah.
that's why they asked you to pay that off too. You might not
Yeah.
have qualified, again, I wasn't your lender, but you might not have qualified or it significantly reduced
Mm-hmm.
your pre-approval amount, or it took you over debt to income ratios.
Mm.
So there's a
I
couple
don't
things
remember the
going. So
details of
Meta,
that, but yeah, they
yeah,
redid some things and worked it out because we were pissed. We were like pissed. We're literally 30 days away from moving into this house, and y'all decided to tell us this, and it was Christmas season. Christmas season.
yeah,
I was like, come on now, this was not right, not right at all.
yeah. And to Meta, that's what I'm saying. To your point, if people don't have a car, or if they have a car, no car, no.
Hmm.
Look, is that your hubby on? Say, hey, we
Yes,
paid 16K.
yes,
Go ahead, hubby. That's what we talking about. He handled that business. Yeah,
yes.
but that's why, right? So
Hmm.
there are lender financial aspects to that,
Hmm.
right? That we want you to have as less debt as possible,
Yeah.
right? And think about it, Meta. Now, if someone lives in the city like DC or New York or Philly, guess what? Some of these places you don't even need a car anymore,
That's
right?
facts.
Now with Uber and Lyft and metro
Mm-hmm.
trains and subways, I mean,
Yeah.
and electric scooters, I
Hmm.
mean,
Everything but a
motorized
bike, right?
bikes, huh?
I was just about to say everything but a bike.
Yeah,
Everything but
motorized bikes
exercise.
too. I've seen news in DC. They
Yeah.
got get up on those bikes, right?
Yeah.
So there are definitely ways that people can own without needing a car anymore. You
Yeah.
know? So
That's true. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, thank you
I'm
for
glad
that.
that I was able to join you tonight.
I am too.
Hopefully I shared some information. I look forward to you working with our ladies for redevelop her. We're gonna get that squared away.
Yes.
But yeah, I think this is great. And I hope maybe I encourage somebody to think about real estate as a career.
I really hope so too. So definitely, you guys, if you would please give this video a thumbs up so others can know how interesting this conversation is. I really appreciate that. Because really, when it comes to this type of conversation, I don't think it's specific just to the real estate business. It's specific to a lot of other jobs too. It can kind of go over the tips and things that you provided, like scoping out the area first, or
Hmm.
being proactive about letting people know where you are. There are other jobs that entail those same things. And so this is
Hmm.
why we have these conversations so we can navigate those fields together. I mean, these guys that are on here tonight, some of them even helped me, pitch the idea to you because they were like, oh, I want to hear about this job. I want to hear about that job.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yep. So that's why I said it's a community discussion. Like, I'm here to try to serve the community to help you guys navigate through life because I understand safety doesn't, happen from our government on down. It actually starts within the home. It starts within the home. So let's have those home conversations. And every
Hmm.
day, most people are going to work and can relate to these type of situations, and it can help them a lot. So this is why I do this.
Exactly. And I love it. I told you. Oh, we met online that
Yes.
we were already thinking about, the gun safety and the fact that you really love to work with women. I think is just going to be a win-win
Yes.
for our organization, not just redevelop her, but even my realtor organization too.
Okay.
That, some others of us need to, do the gun safety training as well. So,
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I mean, you're right. This is definitely my passion. I love helping women be able to understand that we do have the power to defend ourselves. I mean, I've literally listened to, I don't know what podcast it was. I was listening to a podcast, and a young lady was talking about how she felt that it wasn't her job to protect herself physically, period. She felt like she needed to have a man to do it. And even if it wasn't a husband or boyfriend, that maybe it was her dad or her brother or cousin, or if not, she'll just ball up in a little ball and get beat up. And I was like, I'm not trying to judge
mm,
anybody, but I don't know about that way of, thought process. I personally did
right,
think that there were women that thought like this, but I
right,
was really surprised about that because I wasn't raised around women like that. And so,
right.
yeah, but just to meet all types of women in this industry, in the firearm industry, I see a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and people do surprise me every day with their thought process.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and God forbid this woman that you're talking about, if no one's around, like survival of the fittest, self-preservation first. So
that's what I was
I used to be
thinking.
a flight attendant. You got to put your own oxygen mask on first, really.
Yes,
And even as moms or caregivers, we're always thinking about other, especially as women, other people. You cannot take care of other people unless you take care of yourself. And I always use
yes,
that flight attendant example because at first you're like, over my child, you can't help your child breathe if you can't breathe.
yeah.
There's no way, right? There's just no
Hmm.
way. And so we have to look at that, in so
They said
many
I
different
definitely learned a lot
capacities.
to get a gun.
See, that's good. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm really, really glad I can influence you guys and help you guys with that thought process. But just know buying a gun is not the end of it. You definitely have to make sure you have the training on it as well. Whatever choice you make for self defense, have practice,
Hmm.
regular practice with that particular way of self defense. So that way you'll be prepared to react because seconds matter. Seconds really do matter. So, again, thank everybody for joining. If you have not subscribed already, please do subscribe so you can stay tuned to more information that we're going to have for you guys every week. And also, more interviews coming. Miss Stephanie is going to do an interview with us, and we're going to learn a bit more about her nonprofit organization and some
Yeah.
other things she has going on. So, we're going to dive a little deep so she can tell us a little bit more about how she's helping other women as well. So, definitely, I
Yes.
appreciate everyone for joining, and thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
You're
one.
welcome.
Bye bye.